Hello, and welcome to Serious Baked Goods. Today we're going to be trying out some red currant tarts. This is going to be the first time trying out these. These will be a work in progress, so the recipe will be in the description below, but it will be changing as I continue to work with this recipe. So first we're going to make the dough. I'm going to test out making a pie dough first. So this is just a regular old pie dough that I use for all my other pie recipes. Later on I might try a tart crust. I just like how the pie dough is softer, where tart crusts are a lot harder and stuff. I prefer the soft one. So just like with the pies, we're going to rub in the butter before we add in the water and eggs. So we're just going to rub it in. Again, make sure you use your fingers, not your palms. You don't want to melt the butter, we're just trying to rub it in. Once it's all rubbed in, we'll add the other liquid in, and then we'll start to form it into a ball. So you want it about like that. We're going to add in the water. Make sure it's cold water. We definitely do not want to ruin the butter. Make sure it's nice and cold. Same with the egg. Then we're just going to mix this all up together. You don't have to use the egg, just add a bit more water, but the egg gives it a nice more yellow color or orange color, while also giving it a little bit more richness. So once it starts to form a ball, you can then pour it onto the bench to work with. Just going to turn on the light so you guys can see better. And then make sure you pour out all the extra flour and stuff. And then we're just going to knead this together. We don't want to knead this too much. Just enough to form it into a ball. We're not trying to make a bread here. And there we go. And then we're just going to let this rest before we roll it out. We're going to let it rest so that it's easier to roll out, and we're going to let it rest so that the gluten can soften up and not be as chewy when we bake it. So we're going to make sure we put this in the fridge. Now we're going to start on to the red currant. It's just like all the other pies with the fruits, where we're going to put the sugar into the berries with the spices. Then we're going to drain all the juices and make a thickened sauce with those juices, and then pour it back into the berries to make a nice thick filling. So we're just going to mix in these sugar. There we go. Of course, salt. The sugar and the salt will let the juices release better. Which is why we're going to mix it in and let it rest for half an hour or so that all the juices can come out. And what I like to do is I like to just put it over top of my pot in a strainer so that it just naturally drains into the pot, and then I don't have to worry about waiting a few seconds to have it all drain in. Just mix it up nicely. This recipe is very tart, so if you like a sweeter tart, add a little bit more sugar. These are red currants, so they're always very tart, and I wanted to emphasize their strong suit, so I didn't put too much sugar in here. So make sure we get all that liquid in. And then I'm just going to let this sit for half an hour to an hour, letting it drain into the pot. Then we're going to set up our slurry, which is just cornstarch and water. We're going to get a little bit of butter ready to give it a good shine. And then we're going to start to cook it. So all the slurry is going to do is thicken up the sauce. Now remember, when you ever use a slurry, the starch needs to be cooked out. So what that means is you need to make sure that it boils after you've put in the cornstarch. If you don't, it'll have a starchy taste and it's gritty in your mouth. It's not pleasant to have. And just a little bit of butter, just a few grams, just to give it a nice, beautiful shine afterwards. Now you always put the butter in last so that it doesn't cook out the shine. The shine will go away if you keep cooking it. You just put it in at the very end to give it that beautiful shine. And a little bit of richness. So I'm just going to lightly press on these. Don't damage them too much. You don't want to break them. After I've pressed out the juices, you can see I'm pushing out a lot of juices still. I'm going to put this into a pot and put it off to the side. There we go. And just scrape off any extra. Don't want to lose anything. Not to mention, the more you get it clean, the less you have to wash it. Which, in a bakery sense, the less you have to wash, the less soap you have to use, the less water you have to use, and all of that's money. So that looks like 2 cents in the grand scheme of things, but if you think about it over a year's span, how much extra water you use, how much extra soap you used, how much extra juice you lost and didn't put into your products, all of that makes sure that it's probably a few dollars at least, and then you go over the entire lifespan of your bakery, and it ends up being a lot of problems. So once it starts to boil, we're going to put in our cornstarch slurry and just mix it up until it starts to thicken. We're going to have it all set up ready so that once it's thickened, I can put in the butter and then put it straight into the berries. You can see it's starting to thicken up. It's going to look like it's separating. Don't worry, that's just some parts thickening before other parts, until it turns into this beautiful thickened sauce. This recipe will also work with black currants. Just make sure it gets to this thickness. Beautiful. Beautiful shine too. But we need to get that a little bit more shiny and a little bit more rich. There we go. We're just going to mix that up. Now it's off the heat. It should be still hot enough to melt the butter in. Just go slow. There we go. Now once the butter is fully melted in, we'll pour it into our berries. Mix it up a bit so that it's all over the berries. And then we'll start to pour them into our pan. There we go. All the butter's melted. Look at that beautiful shine. Now let's just pour that into the berries. And make sure you get everything. Look at that. Very nice shine. Perfect for our recipe. Now let's make our shells. Now that the dough has rested, bare minimum half an hour, but even better is an hour. Anything past an hour doesn't really change much, but definitely half an hour for sure. Now it's going to be a little hard at first because it's cold and the butter and everything's going to be frozen a bit. But just slowly work on it. Make sure that if any cracks start to form, that you form it back into a ball. Into a circle, because the farther you start to roll it with those cracks, the bigger they'll get. So always just fix them as you go. There we go. Just keep rolling. I have a nice circle cutter that's perfect for this recipe. It's my largest circle cutter. And it fits perfectly into my muffin tray, which is what I'm going to be using for these tarts. I didn't know if they would work perfectly, but it ends up being like exactly to the top or the rim of the muffin tin, which is perfect. Now, I did make these a little too thick for the dough. Next time I'm definitely going to roll them out just a bit further. And all this excess, don't scrunch up too much. Just have it into a nice ball. And then you can put it back into the freezer or fridge, depending on when you're going to use it next. So I'm just going to put all these in nicely on all the corners. You don't need to have a lip for your tarts. It's okay to just have it nice and flat on the top. I actually kind of like this design versus having the lip. And then I'm going to test a few different designs. So I'm just going to test having a normal, no adjustments, just this circle. And other ones I'm going to pinch to see if they can make kind of like a dumpling tart. But we'll see how it turns out. So I'm going to pinch just one side for a few. On one I'm going to pinch both sides. We're going to see if that makes it look nicer. We're just going to pinch it to make sure it's stuck together. For the ones that are pinched, you don't need as much filling because you're pinching the dough over top of it. And if you have it full, you're just going to spill it out everywhere. And with that said, I still overfilled these. I should have filled them probably a quarter less than what I actually filled them. Because in the oven, they'll expand and they'll go over the rim and make a mess. It didn't expand too much, but it gets onto the rim of the dough. When it gets onto the rim of the dough, it looks kind of ugly. Now with the excess, I'll just store in the freezer or the fridge. I don't think I'll be using these anytime soon, so I'll definitely probably put them in the freezer. Again, look at that beautiful shine. Beautiful. Always make sure to egg wash. With this one, I pinched twice. I should have pinched it into the middle more to close it and only have air escape from the 4 holes. That way it would have maybe made a dumpling more, but later on when I bake it, it ends up opening more. So I'll have to test that out again. There we are, and just Finishing all that. Perfect. Now I don't know how long these are going to take, but we're going to start with 15 minutes. And keep checking them as we go. So I checked them at 2 minutes and they weren't even close, so I'm going to add another 15 minutes, but minus that 2 minutes, so a total so far of 28 minutes. And even that wasn't enough, so I added another 10 minutes, but I did it a minute early, so it ends up totally being 37 minutes. And as you can see, they expanded too much and went over the rim, which was a little bit of a mistake. It doesn't ruin the taste, it just makes it look ugly. And if you see the one that is double pinched in the corner, it opened up, and I would have preferred it if it looked more like a dumpling. Kind of like the middle one, like the dead center one, but it ended up not working out that way. If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.